Good afternoon. Gas prices jumped 6 cents across the GTA overnight, and analysts say another major spike is on the way.
The increase is the result of the war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, and the shutdown of a major oil shipping route. CTV's Mike Walker has been speaking with drivers and joins us live with more. Mike.
Well, Nathan, drivers we've been speaking with tell us they're not surprised but are frustrated. They were anticipating this spike as the conflict in the Middle East escalates, but many also add that they feel helpless. They don't have a choice. They need to fill up. So as mentioned, the price at the pumps here in the Toronto area spiked 6 cents overnight. At various gas stations we've been to this morning, we've seen the price of fill up between $1.42 and about $1.44 per liter. Energy experts say as the war drags on, the price of crude will continue to soar. It has largely resulted in the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 of the world's oil is shipped through that narrow waterway. The U.S. president has said he's prepared to deploy the Navy to escort tankers if necessary. In the meantime, as you said, experts are predicting another increase for tomorrow for GTA drivers, between 3 and 6 cents more to fill up. And those drivers are also worried about what impact this may have on other things, such as groceries. Here's more from drivers.
Things are already pretty tight when it comes to other expenses like groceries and stuff like that. So adding an extra cost to gas, just adds on top of that. So not happy about that.
There's not much we can do about it. It's all dependent on what's going on over in the Middle East.
In the Gulf, the oil's not moving, so demand's not changing, but supply is. So price is going up.
It stings very, very much so, because I can't charge in my line of work. I can't charge anymore. So, that's $20 out of my pocket, and, I'm driving in excess of 1,000 kilometers a week.
Nobody wants to pay more at the pump, but, I'm just gassing up now because I heard it's supposed to go up again tonight.
Now, at this point, energy experts can't say how high the price of the pumps will continue to soar. Where will it peak? They say that really depends on how this war plays out. I will be speaking with one of those energy experts this afternoon to help break this all down, and I'll have more on this tonight on CTV News at 5 and 6. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Still to come, the latest on the war in the Middle East. We'll have more on the situation overseas a little later in the newscast.
One person has been seriously injured in a stabbing near Sherbourne and Wellesley. Emergency crews were called to an apartment building in the area around 12:30 a.m. A man was rushed to a trauma center with serious injuries. Police say the stabbing happened inside the building. So far, investigators have not provided any details on possible suspects. Police Chief Myron Demkiw is updating the Toronto Police Service Board meeting today on his response to the Project South anti-corruption investigation.
7 current and 1 former Toronto police officer were arrested and charged by York Regional Police as part of the probe. CTV's John Woodward has been following this story and joins us live with more details. John.
Nathan, we learned late yesterday some of the new measures that Chief Demkiw is hoping to implement, but there are questions about whether Toronto's Civilian Oversight Board can be doing even more.
I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Toronto's police board meeting in the wake of a sweeping anti-corruption probe that resulted in charges against 7 current police officers and 1 retired one. Much of it stemming from how officers are alleged to have leaked information that would have aided hitmen, including in their attempts to kill a Toronto South Detention Centre manager. But court documents also revealed other aspects of the allegations, including tracking a vehicle, accessing TPS computers, and drug trafficking. And an allegation of one faking a stolen car, though the scheme was never carried out. Toronto's Police Chief Myron Demkiw saying in an update to the police board filed late Tuesday, he's planning a dedicated inspection team and a newly formed anti-corruption enforcement team. The chief is starting an anti-corruption project, which he says will focus on supervision, screening officers, looking at their access to police databases, and evidence and property management, as well as substance abuse and fitness for duty. There's also a 1 TPS project that looks at how to keep individual officers motivated to fight corruption. Others have suggested that City Council should investigate the systemic issues directly, saying it's not wise to leave this to the police themselves.
They have this blue wall of silence where they don't talk on each other because clearly if there's 7 officers involved, there are a whole bunch more who must have been asked if they wanted to get involved as well. And nobody's talking about that.
Some of the officers and the civilians arrested appeared in court on Tuesday as the case starts to wind its way through the justice system.
Some of those officers that were arrested work for 12 Division in the city's northwest, and the chief has sent 4 staff sergeants as well as other senior sergeants there to supervise it. As for the board meeting, we're expecting the police board chair, Shelley Carroll, to make a statement about this when the police board resumes its public meeting later on this afternoon. Reporting live from Toronto Police HQ, I'm John Woodward. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, John. An 18-year-old man has been arrested after a loaded gun was seized during a traffic stop in Brampton. Malachi King-Favors is facing 7 charges, including unauthorized possession of a firearm and carrying a concealed weapon. Police say on February 27th, they spotted a vehicle speeding and making unsafe lane changes in the area of Kennedy and Clarence Road. They found a loaded handgun and ammunition when they searched the car.
York Regional Police have charged a priest from East Gwillimbury in a historical sexual assault. 47-year-old Michelle Shafiq, who also goes by the name Michael, is charged with sexual assault and sexual interference. Police say the investigation began in November when a victim came forward claiming they'd been assaulted by Shafiq twice between 1996 and 1999. The victim was under 16 years old at the time. Police are concerned there may be additional victims, and they're asking anyone with information to come forward.
A man is in hospital after being struck by a vehicle in Scarborough. Emergency crews were called to the area of Pharmacy and Comstock Road around 12:15 a.m. A man in his 30s was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The driver involved remained on scene. The circumstances leading up to this man being struck are still under investigation.
Advocates are warning about a crisis related to a lack of funding for developmental services.
They say people with intellectual disabilities are not being cared for properly, often leading to homelessness or becoming victims of crime. CTV's Raheem Ladani has been following this story. He joins us live now with more details. Raheem.
Michelle and Nathan, good afternoon. A system in crisis is how advocates describe the current situation for all of Ontarians living with intellectual disabilities. Leaders say that the wait list for those waiting for critical supports exceeds 50,000 people, and that is leading a lot of good people to homelessness and even exploitation. Now, this first situation was really brought to light in Sudbury, but the advocates at today's press conference say that this is a situation affecting all Ontarians, including here in Toronto. In fact, one official here told me 5 women were rescued last fall from human trafficking in Barrie. Advocates say people are waiting for safe housing, proper care, and this is a result of decades of underfunding, not just from this government, but from governments in the past. Have a listen to what's being said today.
I was once homeless for a year and a half. I didn't have to live on the streets, but for close to 18 months, I didn't have a home. I went from a college dorm to someone's sofa, to a bed and breakfast, then back to someone's sofa. But other people in my situation aren't so fortunate.
When someone with an intellectual disability is sleeping in a tent in a Canadian winter, when a person who works and receives ODSP still cannot afford first and last month's rent, when landlords refuse to rent to people on social assistance, when emergency housing is only accessible after someone has already entered a shelter or encampment, this is not dignity, this is not safety, this is not inclusion.
Now, the provincial budget is going to be tabled at the end of the month, and I've reached out to the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services to ask if any additional money will be earmarked to address long-term solutions for the concerns which are being brought forward today. We're hoping to have an answer for you later this afternoon. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Raheem. The Ford government has announced a review of EQAO testing. The province is creating an advisory body to look into the standardized testing and how Ontario can improve outcomes for students. EQAO results released in December showed half of grade 6 students and 42% of grade 9 students were not meeting the provincial standard in math. Ontario Education Minister Paul Calandra released a statement that reads in part, student achievement must always come first in Ontario's education system. Our government will continue using every tool available to keep Ontario's education system focused on accountability and a back-to-basics approach to support student achievement so that students can reach their full potential and be prepared for good-paying, rewarding careers.
A celebration was held in the city last night, marking 100 days until the World Cup arrives in Toronto.
CTV's Sean Leathong has more on the party and the hard work that still needs to be done.
Everybody. A celebration marking 100 days until Toronto helps host the biggest party in the world.
Feels amazing because like all the greats of the world will be coming to play in BMO Fields.
They still haven't comprehended what's coming to the city. There's going to be a month of huge party, everyone coming together.
Looking forward to cheering on Canada and also seeing all the fans from around the world coming to the city.
Fans say this city is uniquely qualified to welcome fans from all over.
Our slogan is we're a world in a city. And we see that every time. You see that when you go out to the communities. We see that all throughout Scarborough. And now the world gets to see why Toronto is so rich in diversity.
June 12th will see BMO Field become Toronto Stadium. Canada will host an opponent to be determined, the first of 6 matches in the city.
I think it's going to be somewhat breathtaking as far as how much of an impact this will have on the psyche of Canadians who are looking for Canada to do great things on the biggest global stage in sports.
Right now, the work is being done to get up to FIFA's 45,000 seat minimum.
So we're putting in 17,000 temporary seats on both the north and south ends of the stadium.
At City Hall, a more modest celebration as the city gives an update on logistics and how to get around when the city is expecting 300,000 visitors.
Easiest, fastest way to get around downtown is by transit. And that's part of why, we're preparing so much.
With a few fans kicking with excitement.
Toronto is probably the perfect soccer city in that you've got so many communities here that love football.
This FIFA World Cup will be the largest in history, hosted by Canada, the United States, and Mexico. There'll be a record 48 nations taking part, and in a city known for celebrating the world, many will have mixed allegiances.
When Portugal plays, I'm being Portuguese. When Canada plays, I'll be Canadian.
I'll be supporting Canada, Senegal, even Spain, which I think will win.
One Canadian soccer great says this will be a moment when Canadian diversity can unify.
When the anthem is singing, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of passion, and that's our 12th man.
And it's all just over 3 months away. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
Time for a live look at the city this afternoon, and what a gorgeous view. Blue sky, water's looking blue, still seeing some ice there, but it is going to melt because this glorious sunshine and mild temps are warming things up quite a bit. Best to enjoy it. Lindsay Morrison is here because there is some active weather on the way. Not yet, though.
Not today, Michelle. For tomorrow, though, we have to prepare for some rain and some freezing rain. But today, it's all about the sun and these very mild temperatures. We have already reached our forecast daytime high of 5 degrees here in the city of Toronto, but it's +6 in Niagara Falls, Hamilton, and Peterborough, 7 degrees this hour in the Bancroft area. On the satellite and radar, first want to point out the fact that we still have an advisory in place for southwest Ontario as it pertains to fog. You can see that on the radar imagery and satellite, but otherwise it is quiet. We are enjoying the sunshine, calm winds yet again today, and I think at this rate we're going to surpass our expected daytime high and perhaps land somewhere between 5 and 8 degrees for a daytime high today here in the city of Toronto. So again, enjoy it because a change comes for tomorrow. We'll take you through the forecast coming up, but for now, Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Prime Minister Mark Carney is due to address the Australian Parliament later today as he continues his trade mission.
Carney will also be meeting with Australia's cabinet. CTV's Abigail Beeman is traveling with the Prime Minister and has more from Sydney.
You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up.
At a fireside chat at a top Australian think tank, Prime Minister Mark Carney pulled back the curtain on dealing with world leaders, starting with Donald Trump.
It's quite different in private. It's much more. He is more interested in your viewpoint on various things.
While he said Chinese President Xi Jinping spent 10 minutes in his first meeting discussing how he wanted personal interactions to go.
I interpret it, don't lecture me in public, bring issues to me directly.
And when he said central bankers have more fun than prime ministers, illustrated by a story about mixing a time crunch decision with top European wines, Carney used the F word.
You know, tick, tick, tick. And he's like, well, have this one, but, you know, the Pinot Grigio. And I'm like, and then he finishes it and he says, okay, listen, we have an hour.
Earlier in the day, Carney held a series of meetings and announced a deal to further investments by pension funds in both Australia and Canada. Australia has had trouble entering Canada's market.
I think we've struggled to find the opportunities, and this dialogue is in part about unlocking those opportunities. So as they look to private capital, we really want to be at the front of the queue.
It's no longer what or why, it's how. And that's what the Prime Minister is fixing here, is the how to make sure that they can invest more in Canada.
And that's music to the ears of this recently retired Canadian couple on holiday in Australia.
So I would love to see more diversification with equal-minded, similar-minded folks like the Australians. That's just a no-brainer.
Canada's Prime Minister will next address Australia's Parliament and meet with their cabinet and Prime Minister. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Sydney.
U.S. Secretary of State Pete Hegseth says America is winning its war against Iran. He's predicting the U.S. and Israel will have complete control of Iranian airspace in under a week.
It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the RGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power.
Meanwhile, Turkey says NATO air and missile defenses intercepted a ballistic missile from Iran, which was headed towards Turkish airspace. It marks the first time NATO forces have intercepted an Iranian missile heading towards a member country's airspace since the war began. Hegseth was asked if the incident could trigger Article 5 of NATO and whether the U.S. shot down the missile.
On the matter with Turkey, I'll have to get back to you on exactly what the intercept looked like at that. We're aware of that particular engagement, although no sense that it would trigger anything like Article 5.
The U.S. and Israel are continuing to bomb Iran, prompting retaliatory strikes on Israel and neighboring Gulf states. The Israeli military says Iranian security headquarters were struck in overnight attacks. Iranian state media says a 3-day funeral for Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's former supreme leader who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Saturday, has been postponed. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency says more than 1,000 civilians have been killed in Iran since the U.S.-Israeli attacks began on Saturday. Meanwhile, the U.S. says it sunk an Iranian warship with a torpedo in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Sri Lanka. At least 80 people were killed. The attack marks the first time since the Second World War that an American submarine has sunk another ship in combat with a torpedo. And CTV's Scott Hurst has been following the war and joins us live with more. Scott, Canada is warning against travel to several countries in the Middle East. What more can you tell us about Canada's response and comments today from the Prime Minister?
Nathan, good afternoon. As we just heard recently from U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the U.S. is warning of a bigger wave of military strikes in the day to come, as we're now hearing from Prime Minister Mark Carney, now several days into his foreign trip, commenting on camera for the first time about the situation in Iran from Australia. And he somewhat clarified his initial statement after the initial strikes by the U.S. and Israel on Saturday. He did reaffirm Canada's original support of the initial strike by the United States and the effort to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but said that comes with regret. As he said, the current conflict is yet another example of the failure of international order, saying initial support is not a blank check. Carney is calling for a rapid de-escalation and says Canada stands ready to support that goal, saying diplomatic engagement and a path to diplomacy is essential to avoid a wider and deeper conflict. As we're already seeing, this conflict is widening with every passing day. Here's more from the Prime Minister speaking from Australia.
It's for the United States and Israel to make the case, and for whether or not that is the case. And it's for others, more expert than me, non-lawyer, certainly non-international lawyer, who are more expert to make that determination. And that said, well, Canada was not asked to participate. You know that. We were not informed in advance. We were not asked to participate. Prima facie, it appears that these actions are inconsistent with international law.
And Nathan, further on in his comments, the Prime Minister reminded all parties, including the U.S. and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement, while also calling on Iran to stop its strikes against civilians across the Middle East.
And Scott, what do we know about the next steps for Ottawa to coordinate these evacuations?
Right now, we know Ottawa is in coordination, is in contact, and is aware of more than 100,000 Canadians registered throughout the Middle East. This is registered through the Registration of Canadians Abroad program, or the ROCA program, and those numbers have grown significantly over the last couple of days since this latest round of fighting broke out with the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Saturday. So specifically from Global Affairs Canada, it says it is not currently offering any assisted departures, but says it is working on a range of options, and saying at this point commercial flights out of Lebanon are still available for Canadians wishing to depart, saying the government of Canada has also secured a limited number of seats on commercial flights from Beirut, adding that Israel's Ministry of Tourism is operating buses through a border crossing with Egypt, but saying right now the Canadian government is urging Canadians to leave the region through their own means. However, that is becoming increasingly more difficult with the limitations on airspace, Nathan.
All right, CTV Scott Hurst in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
We're learning more about the Carney government's priorities for Canada's defence strategy. For more, we're joined live by CTV's Jeremy Charon in Ottawa. Jeremy, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand spoke at the Ottawa Conference on Defence Security this morning. What were the key takeaways for you?
Yeah, Michelle, look, the Foreign Affairs Minister speaking to this conference, she was the keynote speaker this morning and outlined kind of three themes, at least focused on three themes during her opening remarks. The first being Canada's supports for Ukraine and the ongoing war there and what Canada has done to support Ukraine. The second being efforts underway to invest in the Arctic and ensure Canada's security in the Arctic. The Foreign Affairs Minister recently made a trip to Nuuk, Greenland to open a consulate there, and Canada is investing more in the Arctic as it rapidly increases its defense spending. The third focus during those opening remarks really mirrored what we heard from the Prime Minister in Australia about the Middle East. Very much what Scott was just underlining about what the Prime Minister had to say about the ongoing situation in the Middle East. But this conference is one that focuses on Canada's defense strategy and specifically on Canada's increased defense spending. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, they have established a new target to reach 2% of GDP spending on defense. That target is the end of this month. And so the minister pledged to stick to that target of reaching 2% by the end of this month. But also NATO members have agreed during the 2025 NATO summit in The Hague to increase defense spending to 5%. That is a pledge that Canada has made and is promised to do so by 2035. And the minister this morning addressed what that's going to look like and the importance of sticking to those commitments. Here's more from Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand this morning.
The road to 5%, to use the title and theme of this year's conference, must be understood in the context of the global strategic environment. And at its core, our approach in foreign policy is grounded in a simple idea that we must accept the world as it is, not as we wish it to be.
Now, Michelle, to reach that 5%, it would take a massive further ramping up of spending on defense. It's estimated it would cost the government an extra $33 billion roughly annually to get to that 5% of GDP spending on defense.
Well, Jeremy, let's talk about some of the big ticket items. Ottawa is facing a major decision in the coming months to replace Canada's aging submarines and fighter jets. Do you know anything about the government's plans on that front?
Yeah, well, look, certainly if the government is keen on achieving that 5% target, committing to big contracts like the fighter jet contract and the submarine contract will help. Those are big ticket items, as you've touched on. What we know so far is that on the submarines, Canada is significantly closer to making a decision than they are on the fighter jets. They're looking to procure a fleet of 12 submarines, and they're looking now at 2 proposals. March 2nd was the deadline for companies to submit their proposals. We have a proposal that is being considered from a German company, TKMS, and from a South Korean company, Hanwha. Both meet all the criteria of the Canadian Armed Forces. Both are pledging tens of billions of dollars in incentives in the Canadian economy if their proposal is chosen. And so what we have learned is that it is expected a decision will be made on which of those two proposals will move forward by June, so ahead of the summer break of Parliament. When it comes to the fighter jets, there are less answers in terms of a timeline. What we know is so far the Canadian government has committed to and paid for 16 American-made F-35 fighter jets. The big question is whether or not they continue to procure those same jets or opt for a different option. Specifically, there is consideration for the Swedish-made Gripen, which is a product of the Swedish car manufacturer Saab. The big question is whether or not the Canadian government continues to move forward with that American-made F-35 that is widely believed to be the most capable jet, or if they opt for a different option, given the changed relationship that Canada has with the U.S. right now. They're looking for a fleet of 88 fighter jets to replace the aging CF-18s, but there are still many questions, Michelle, as to whether or not those will be F-35s or they'll be the Swedish Gripens, and we have no further indication at this point as to when a final decision will be made on the fighter jets.
Ooh, wonder what they'll do on that front. CTV's Jeremy Charon live for us in Ottawa. Thank you.
Of course, anytime.
Back here in Toronto, John Tory's announcement that he will not be running for mayor this fall has changed the forecast for the October vote.
Brad Bradford is the only declared candidate so far, and new polling is giving him a much better shot at securing the city's top job. CTV's Natalie Johnson is at City Hall and joins us live now with more. Natalie.
Well, Nathan, a two-horse race would certainly change the dynamic of the campaign here, and new polling numbers gives us a sense of just how close it could be.
Okay, Robert. The day after John Tory made it official that he would not try to win back the mayor's chair.
You've seen the last of me in elected politics.
The battle for Toronto's top job is a brand new race.
In a single day with a single statement, John Tory has scrambled this mayor's race like a plate of eggs.
Mayor Olivia Chow was widely expected to run again, but was still playing coy on that last night.
Right now, I'm working hard to make life affordable.
Whereas declared candidate Brad Bradford is now in the pole position as Chow's challenger.
Torontonians are going to have a choice about the future of this city. Do you want more of the same, or do you want something better? Do you want status quo, or do you want something different? I think the vast majority of Torontonians are looking for a local government that's focused on delivering the basics. A city that can clean up the snow in the wintertime and keep the pools open in the summertime.
New polling from Abacus data shows that in that two-horse race, Chow and Bradford are head-to-head in a statistical tie. 37% for Chow, 34% Bradford.
This is a bad day, I think, for Mayor Chow, because she would have much rather had a field that was going to split the anti-incumbent vote, and it's highly likely now that we're going to see two very different options put before the people of Toronto, and that means I think her vulnerabilities will become much more clear and harder for her to get reelected than would otherwise have been.
But could more names crowd the ballot?
I'm just not convinced that there's a big enough name that could really disrupt this race. And to his credit, Brad Bradford has spent relentless years working hard to till this ground, to set up this candidacy. And I think it's going to be hard now with John Tory's departure to bump him off of that log.
I think you'd say never, but I would hope not, because that vote will split. And we saw that was what was happening in polling when it was a three-way race, presumably between John, Brad, and Olivia. The center and the center-right would split between John and Brad. So if the center and the center-right really want to have a shot at winning this, there can only really be one candidate, and that candidate is Brad Bradford.
I should just not do this.
Tory's news has Toronto talking, reigniting interest in a tightening race. The campaign countdown is on.
And we have reached out to Mayor Chow's office for a comment on these new poll numbers, but I've not heard back on that yet. Again, Chow has not officially declared whether she will run again for mayor. The campaign begins May 1st. Toronto goes to the polls October 26th. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Daylight saving time begins Sunday, and in British Columbia, it'll mark the last time residents of that province have to change their clocks.
And that's reignited debate here in Ontario over whether this province should follow suit. CTV's Dave Scarborough has more on the timely debate.
For most of Shane Fear's life, he's never had to deal with changing to daylight saving time.
I'm from Saskatchewan originally, and so over there they've never had it as far as I know. Well, it takes a little thinking, you know, spring forward, fall back. What does that mean exactly? It's not a big deal. It's only an hour, right? But at the same time, I feel it's unnecessary.
And the British Columbia NDP government agrees. BC is now switching to permanent daylight time. But this sleep expert says sticking to standard time is best for our health.
The time that we're in now is, the normal time that's dictated by the sun. A lot of people are already sleep deprived, so this kind of worsens that. But also the fact that we're getting more light in the evening, it actually suppresses our sleeping hormones that kind of rise before bedtime and pushes our bedtimes and our sleep times later as well.
As for Ontario, Premier Ford has stated the province is ready to follow BC's lead, but with a major condition: only if Quebec and New York State also follow suit. In a statement from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, they say, while some may be relieved not to change the clocks each year, the lack of coordination with other jurisdictions risks causing confusion and disruption.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business was upset with the move away from the time change. And when you have different time zones, it increases the chance that that becomes complicated and difficult. So it increases the friction in business transactions, or increases the chances that, your scheduling is going to be disrupted from, an inability to deal with that time change.
Most Ottawa residents we spoke to are in favor of doing away with changing the clocks.
You get screwed up when you have to change your sleep. So don't change your sleep patterns. Everything will be fine.
I absolutely hate it. I don't understand why we have to do that. And everyone's system gets out of whack.
It's a pain. I don't mind the fall back, but the spring ahead's a pain.
I think I'm pretty adaptable myself, so I don't know that I have a real opinion on the matter.
For most Canadians, clocks spring ahead 1 hour this Sunday morning at 2 a.m.
I would like to stop switching. Stop switching. Just keep it, leave it alone.
Dave Charbonneau, CTV News.
Well, on the bright side, next week we are going to have much brighter evenings, and on a day like this, you will really notice it. Here's a look at our skating forecast for the rest of the day today. Loads of sunshine, mild temperatures, and clear skies into the night as well. I also want to point out the fact that ski conditions look awesome across Ontario right now. Enjoy a taste of the spring season on the slopes before some wet weather rolls in. And yes, we do have that in the forecast too. So coming up, we'll give you an idea of the timing of it and just how much could fall in and around the GTA. That's after the break here on CTV News at noon.
The World Cup is coming to Canada.
Right before I close my eyes, they have a dream to fulfill.
Canada, this is the moment we've all been waiting for.
That's what they came for!
Let's talk about the forecast, and we know that we're still in winter technically, but it's starting to feel like spring.
Today is glorious, and I was climbing over some awkward snowbanks, couldn't open my car because they're still there, and I think there's a very chance they go way down by the end of this week.
I might think that by this time next week, a lot of the snow will be gone in Toronto. Not only do we have very mild temperatures, which are going to lead to a whole lot of melting, but we've got some periods of rain that are going to move in too. Now, there is concern when it comes to the snowpack because there's a lot of moisture in there, and especially for areas north of the GTA, that could lead to problems. The ground is still somewhat frozen, so the runoff doesn't have a lot of places to go, and so localized flooding could be a concern over the next few days, something we're going to keep an eye on. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm, injury lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. But today we're just going to focus on the good news, and that's the fact that we've got sunshine and we've got mild temperatures. Going forward the next few days, we're going to have the mild temperatures, and less in the way of sunshine. So let's enjoy today, shall we? Head outside, enjoy an afternoon stroll. It's already +5 at Pearson Airport, still 2 degrees in Windsor, but it's 6 degrees in Wyerton as well as the nation's capital. Ottawa, 6 degrees at this hour. I think just about everyone expected to soar above the forecast daytime high for today. Bancroft, for example, already warmer than that. The sun is starting to feel a little warmer at this time of year also, and we are gaining daylight ahead of even the clock springing forward over the weekend. We're gaining on average 3 to 4 minutes through the month of March. The day is getting longer. That is fabulous news. Tonight, evening at a glance, clear skies, +4 through the early evening hours, and then -1 degree through the overnight. Tomorrow, not looking quite as mild in some areas as it was yesterday. Still forecasting 5 degrees in Whitby, but only 1 in Oakville, for example. And as we progress through the day, we see periods of drizzle, followed by periods of rain, and maybe some freezing rain in there too. On our upper ridge, I just want to point out that the jet stream is going to be moving quite a bit further to the north as we progress through the next little bit here into next week, and that's going to mean more in the way of mild temperatures, but the jet stream also acting as a conveyor belt, bringing a whole lot of moisture-laden systems toward us here in southern Ontario. We get one of them through the day tomorrow. So as mentioned, some drizzle daytime, periods of rain or freezing rain for your Thursday evening and night. And again, the models right now are showing a little more in the way of ice than they were compared to earlier this week. So periods of freezing rain. Hopefully this misses a good portion of the Thursday night drive. And then Friday daytime looks not bad, but Friday night heading into Saturday, we could be in for another soaker. So just be mindful of this. Not a whole lot of rain for Thursday, but again, you get the heavy rain, especially in southwestern Ontario, combined with melting snow. That's especially the case in northern Ontario. And again, some spring runoff and flooding a possibility. Back up around 6 degrees for a high on Friday, but let's talk about the weekend. 15 degrees on Saturday, a little bit cooler for Sunday, but still above seasonal, still mild. And then the early days of next week look to be in the double digits, in the teens in many cases. So we're going to keep an eye on the long range to see just how long we can enjoy this early taste of spring for. That's the 7-day forecast for now. Michelle, I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, the Maple Leafs are second last in the Eastern Conference. They haven't won since the Olympic break, and they need to win a game.
Nice again, Tavares. Nylander, he scores!
The team is coming off a 3-2 shootout loss to the Philadelphia Flyers on Monday. The Leafs have not won, like I said, since the NHL returned from that break. So puck drop for tonight's game is set for just after 7 p.m. in New Jersey.
Still to come, public health officials in York Region are warning residents about possible exposure to the measles. We'll have those details when we come back.
When you see it happen, send it to CTV News. Text 10400 from your screen to ours. Text 10400.
Public health officials in York Region are warning residents about possible exposure to the measles. There are 6 exposure sites, including several public buses linked to a newly confirmed case. Officials say the person got measles outside the country and was in York Region while they were contagious. The exposure sites include Cordelucci Vaughan Hospital's emergency department last Saturday between 3 p.m. and 6:10 p.m. A full list of exposure sites can be found at york.ca. Canadians are considering a number of different destinations for March break this year.
But do those locations come with different travel requirements? CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan has the details.
With Cuba, Mexico, and Florida off many Canadians' lists for March break travel, Dr. Christine Palme says she's hearing more about patients planning for Southeast Asia, the Mediterranean, and Central America.
I think that there is a shift in location choice just based on what's happening globally.
And that may mean different vaccinations are needed.
Some locations such as Africa, Southeast Asia, they do require pre-planning in order to get the vaccines. There's also some financial costs that may be associated with this that may need some financial planning in advance.
For example, example, anti-malaria medications must be taken before, during, and after your trip, depending on where you're traveling, and new vaccinations are always being developed.
We now have vaccines against chikungunya, which is an illness that can be quite devastating. There's some things down the pipeline for dengue fever.
Measles is spreading in many countries, so make sure all your standard immunizations are up to date.
Patients who have chronic diseases may need to speak to their family doctors about bringing certain medications, antibiotics, particularly if they're traveling somewhere remotely. So, really there's not a one size that fits all.
Anti-nausea medication, diarrhea treatment, and pain meds are recommended for your first aid kits. Don't forget sun protection and bug repellent, especially in areas where mosquito-borne illnesses like Zika, chikungunya, and malaria are common. And while March break is less than 2 weeks away, there is still time for vaccinations.
Generally speaking, nothing is too late.
Dr. Palme says visiting a travel clinic, especially for overseas destinations, is a good idea. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Still to come on CTV News at noon, Roots is exploring a review which could result in the company being sold. We'll have more on the retailer's financial struggles when we come back.
The trading day is not over, but so far it's been a less negative one for stocks compared to the start of the week. The S&P 500, NASDAQ, and the Dow are all just slightly in the green after rising in morning trading. There were some jitters after South Korea's main index plummeted a record 12% for its worst day in history. But U.S. stocks have fared better as spikes in oil costs eased off. Here in Canada, the S&P TSX Composite Index is up around half a percentage point for the day.
March is Fraud Prevention Month, and a new survey finds many Canadians are dealing with fraud fatigue. An RBC survey finds 83% of respondents say it's safest to assume any unexpected calls and messages are a scam. Meanwhile, Equifax Canada says 7 in 10 Canadians are worried about identity theft, followed by digital payment scams and investment or romance frauds. Experts are warning artificial intelligence is increasingly being used to create fake legal documents that are more convincing. A majority of Canadians also want banks to implement stronger security measures, and most people want to see mandatory fraud education in schools.
Roots is exploring a strategic review which could lead to the sale of the company. The Canadian apparel brand says the move will allow it to analyze options in order to boost value for shareholders. Roots opened its first location in Toronto in 1973 and has more than 200 stores across Canada and Asia.
Comedian Mike Myers is set to receive a special honor at this year's Canadian Screen Awards. Myers, who's from Scarborough, will accept the Academy Icon Award. Recently, the 62-year-old has been outspoken in supporting Canada amid annexation threats by the Trump administration. He appeared in ads alongside Prime Minister Carney and wore that Canada is not for sale shirt on Saturday Night Live. Nominees for this year's Screen Awards will be announced in 3 weeks, with the ceremony being held on May 31st.
A Game of Thrones movie is reportedly on its way to the big screen. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Warner Brothers is developing the title with Beau Willimon, who wrote the hit streaming series Andor and House of Cards. Just like the spin-off shows House of the Dragon and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, it's expected the movie will be a prequel to Game of Thrones, which aired its final episode in May 2019. A different story from the world of Westeros will debut on stage in the UK this summer.
Coming up, one local resident has become a millionaire overnight. The winning ticket for last night's Lotto Max jackpot was sold in the city. We'll have those details when we come back.
Is the moment we've all been waiting for. That's what they came for!
One Toronto resident woke up $75 million richer this morning as the winning ticket for last night's Lotto Max jackpot was sold here in the city. OLG says a single winning ticket for the grand prize was sold somewhere in Toronto. 2 max million prizes, each worth $1 million, were also won in last night's draw. One ticket was sold online, while the other was, as we said, sold somewhere in Toronto.
Who is that person? They have to reveal themselves.
Reveal yourselves and give us an interview. I love hearing what they plan to do with all that money.
It's a big one. So what about the weather lottery? How are we doing there?
Yeah, I think today is a win for all of us. It's mild and it's sunny. That's the best we can ask for, I think, at this time of year. Here's one more look at what we're looking at as we make our way through the rest of the day and into the night tonight, dropping to an overnight low of -1 degree. This is after we likely climb to 6, 7, 8 degrees, depending on where you are in the GTA. And then tomorrow, yeah, it's a little bit of a cooler day. And us hovering near 1 degree means that we could get some rain. We could also get some freezing rain, and that's looking likely right now into Thursday evening. Next few days, yeah, they become mild again. 6 degrees for Friday, 15 on Saturday. And then we have a couple of opportunities for daytime highs in the double digits or teens as we make our way through the early part of next week. So hello, spring, likely not permanently, but we're enjoying this taste of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay. And that's it for CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.